Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I know this video is long awaited. It's been almost 4 months. Currently it's spring break for me actually, and I just got back from Charleston, but finally got around to editing all of these video clips and compiling them, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about my trip to Vietnam. As soon as it was winter break for me, we booked it to Vietnam and we started off in Saigon, right? We spent about 1 or 2 days there, I believe, just trying to get used to the time zone with family, and afterwards we booked it to Da Nang, and this is where the tour actually started. It was super cloudy and very rainy the entire time I was in central Vietnam. Honestly, I doubt I saw the sun for almost a week. Since it's almost been 4 months, I honestly forgot the names of the sites that I visited, but I do remember this is some sort of stone mountain. I honestly don't remember too much from this site, but it was fun just getting out of the house for the first time in a couple days, and it was also fun seeing all of the different tourists around because I feel like my first few days in Vietnam I was just surrounded by locals, so it was finally nice seeing some touristy faces again. Wish I could tell you more about this cave, but all I remember is a bunch of young kids coming in when we were trying to get out, so I was just waiting forever in that cave, and the cave was just filling up with children. But we made it to the hotel. The hotel was pretty nice. This is one of my more favorite hotels because it was like a resort layout, so you'd have to walk around to get to where you wanted to go. For example, if I wanted to go to the gym, I'd have to step out of my room and walk a little bit. But also, the room was pretty nice. I really did like this one because it was in a more quiet area. The background was a rice field, so that's great, but of course it was a little bit cloudy. Gym was in a strange, secluded area, but it got the job done. I did have a jump scare when the bellboy just walked in and said Xin Chao, and I was like, what? In addition to visiting the Stone Mountain, we also visited Hoi An this day, and this is where the hotel is actually located, so I'd say it was about a 30-minute drive. Also, I don't think I recorded much of it, but throughout the tour we had essentially a van driver that would drive us from location to location, and I really do miss the vans because they were just really big, very comfy, very clean. Great vibes. I think Hoi An is known for being very rainy and prone to flooding because 1 or 2 weeks before I arrived, I remember I saw TikToks of people just wading through water because it rained so much. I'm just really glad it didn't rain on me. A lot of people had their umbrellas out, and speaking of people, there was just so many tourists here. It literally felt like America again. I do feel like one day was enough to explore Hoi An, especially for the night market at nighttime, but outside of that, I was pretty much done and ready to go. At the night market, we walked around, and for dinner we got their regional dish called Gao Lao. So I have no idea what was inside of it. It was just a jumble of meat, vegetables, and noodles. It was pretty good. I've never seen it back here, so it's good to try new foods at all times. I think some of my more favorite memories from Vietnam is the random street food stands. So for example, we got chea this night, and it was just so fun sitting in a little chair, eating from a little bowl, watching people pass by, slurping on your 25-cent bowl. The next day when I woke up, it was my first time experiencing a Vietnamese breakfast buffet. Every single hotel that you visit will offer breakfast no matter how crusty it is, and this one, it kind of set my expectations pretty high. You can always grab a bowl of pho or sometimes bún bò Huế. There's just so many options to choose from, and when I went to Charleston, honestly the hotel, the American Continental breakfast disappointed me so much. So this hotel did set the expectations high because later on when I visited other parts of Vietnam, for example, we also toured the southwest, so Nhat Dai. We stayed at like the only hotel in the region that happened to be 3 stars, and honestly it was kind of slacking. So this one was pretty good compared to some of the other hotels I went to. I also did mention this in my vlog from Thailand, but The hotels in Thailand were also really slacking, probably even worse than the Vietnamese ones. It was just a terrible time there for the breakfast buffets. Also, as you might be able to tell, it was almost Christmas time, hence all the Christmas decoration in the vlog. Came into this trip expecting to gain weight from eating so much, but honestly I don't know what's in the food here, but I ended up losing, and when I got back to America I ended up, adjusting and becoming my regular weight. For our second day of the tour, we visited Banana Hills. Think of it as the Disney World of Vietnam. There was a very long cable car that took us up, but as soon as I got up to the top of that mountain, I regretted wearing shorts so badly. I also regretted wearing my slides because the bottom of the shoes, they were worn out from wearing them for multiple years. And because of all the wet puddles from the rain, I kept on slipping, so I probably fell, or I fell for real once and I landed on my butt and it did hurt, but there were also multiple times where I just slipped and I was able to catch myself, so that was probably like over 10 times I counted that day. We walked around the garden, we saw the hand holding the bridge, but it was just so gloomy, so cloudy, so cold. It was not fun. It was not Disney World at all for me. But I'm sure during the summer, based off all the TikToks and all the pictures I've seen, it's beautiful, but in the moment, this is not it. Buffet for lunch at Banana Hills was also a little bit sus because there's just so many tourists who are unfamiliar with all the sauces, all the scents, all the foods. They kind of brought the spoon up to their nose to sniff, which did seem gross. I was honestly just so glad to get back to our hotel in Da Nang, and Da Nang is essentially the Miami of Vietnam, but again, it was very gloomy, it was very cold, rainy, wet. It just did not seem like Miami at all, but I'm sure during the summer it's beautiful. It was just so rainy that day, we didn't want to go out, so we ended up eating overpriced food at the hotel. I got fettuccine because I was missing American food. I think my most favorite thing about this hotel was the gym at nighttime because you're just so high up and you can see the city and the beach. I honestly would love to gym here again. The breakfast buffet was kind of compared to my original first breakfast, but I'll talk to you a little bit about oatmeal. So if you know me, you know that oatmeal is my most favorite food. I've been eating it every single day since high school, and honestly I didn't know what I was going to do when I got to Vietnam, but I feel like when I got there, soy, which is sticky rice, it became a new version of oatmeal because it's a warm carb. You can make it salty, you can make it sweet. It just made me feel comforted again. Will say eating so much soy probably came back to bite me in the butt later because TMI, but later on in the trip I thought I'd have to go to the ER because of how bad my constipation issues were. So maybe eating soy every single morning is just not the smartest choice, but it was so good in the moment, guys. There was a soy shop, a little cart right in front of my family member's house, so I just go there every single morning to eat it, but no regrets, no regrets. This day we visited Meet Sun, so think of it as a historical war site. Honestly, we did visit a lot of historical religious sites, which was a little bit boring for me. I don't know how much history I was able to retain from the tour guide. The tour guide did a really great job at conveying his ideas in both English and Vietnamese, so I could understand both sides of it. But I will say, the lunches they offered during this tour, it was just way too much food. It just kept on coming and coming, but all I want for lunch is just a simple bowl of pho, for example, to get me by. But no, they overfed us for real, and I think we're all kind of scared. When it rains, it pours, and I remember this was a very cold, rainy day. Clearly, I didn't learn my lesson because I wore shorts again, so I was still freezing in the cold. For dinner this day, I remember we tried out mi wang. So think of some big yellow egg noodles with meat and peanuts. Honestly, I thought it was a bit too oily for my liking. I wasn't a huge fan of it, honestly. I've had better bowls in California. But, time moves on, it was the next day, so we're back at the breakfast buffet. Before we left the hotel, I visited the beach. It looked a little bit scary. I would not want to swim in this. Also, it was still raining, and as you can see, I haven't learned my lesson. I'm still wearing shorts. I'm still wearing those same slides that I kept on slipping in. So whenever I was trying to follow my family, I'd be like 10 million steps behind because I'm just trying to take baby steps so I don't slip and fall for real. On this day, we drove through an overpass. I think during the summer, it is supposed to have way better views because you're kind of just driving through a mountain and you can look down and see the ocean, but all we saw was just infinite clouds. But this day, we made it to Hue, so think of it as a more bustling version of what I just encountered in Hue An, but also kind of maybe in between Da Nang, so kind of the in-between middle. It had more signs of life than Hue An, but it didn't feel like an over-industrialized version of Da Nang. This was my most favorite day history-wise. I feel like I had this weird hyperfixation about the kings and the princes of Vietnam because I spent so much time researching after. I don't know. It was pretty interesting actually. Apparently back in the day, Hue was actually where the quote-unquote capital of Vietnam was. So this is where the king used to live, and I was just so into it. I spent all night on Wikipedia. We take a moment to talk about how bad the driving is in Vietnam. Anyways, at this point, it was Christmas Eve, so we went to Christmas Eve Mass, and the church was totally decked out, but we came too early, so we actually went to eat a bowl of bún bò Huế. So this is my first bowl of bún bò Huế in Hue, which was awesome, and we still had leftover time, so I went to the mall, we did some shopping, then I went to church. Apparently church was supposed to start at 9 p.m, so that's when we showed up. But 9 p.m. was actually when the Christmas pageant was happening. Eventually, Mass did end. It was almost midnight by this point. I went to the gym. The gym was pretty nice. And the next morning, this was actually Christmas. So here is the Christmas breakfast lineup. Honestly, not my most favorite breakfast hotel, but also not the worst. On Christmas Day, we visited Our Lady of La Vang, which was about a 1 hour drive out, and afterwards we went to an outdoor market. Actually, I lied, it wasn't outdoor, but that's honestly what it felt like because it was raining and people were tracking in dirt and mud, so overall it was pretty disgusting, and we ended up losing each other, and because we didn't have any Viet phones, we were just wandering around in circles trying to find each other, and eventually we also lost track of where the tour guide was, so we didn't have his phone number. We were just wandering around aimlessly for almost an hour, and it was terrible. Eventually we made our way back. We found the tour guide. After borrowing someone's phone, we did a little boat excursion to see one more pagoda, and we made it to the airport. I don't think it was that long of a flight, honestly. Probably like under an hour to get to Hanoi, so now we're in the north of Vietnam. This hotel, it was called Conifer. It was giving cramped New York City hotel, and I was just not feeling it, and we spent so many nights here in this hotel too. This first night, I remember we got there pretty late, so it was around 10 p.m. when we started looking for dinner, so we ended up at an overpriced tourist trap. Did not enjoy the food, but you know, it is what it is. Honestly, I wish I tried the Vietnamese McDonald's instead, next door. Next day, I woke up to the breakfast buffet, which really disappointed me because the selection was so small and the options didn't taste good either, but you know, it is what it is. Food is fuel. This day was dedicated to just touring the city of Hanoi. So the first place we visited was Vietnam's first university, which you can see on their currency. My biggest mistake was wearing shorts in northern Vietnam. First of all, because it was a little bit chilly. Second of all, More importantly, they're much more strict, so I wasn't able to access some of the temples, some of the memorial sites because I was wearing shorts. Thankfully, the tour guide did pull through. She rescued me for some spots because she offered me her jacket to wrap around my waist. I think my most favorite tourist activity, though, in Hanoi was visiting Train Street and just sipping on my coffee and looking at the train passing by while petting cats and dogs. I know the air is pretty bad in Vietnam, but I feel like it was especially worse in Hanoi because my boogers literally turned brown. Lunch this day, I remember it being as one of the quote-unquote better days. We still were overly stuffed, but I think the food items that they brought out were higher quality and they also just tasted better. We tried out sit low, so think of a guy in the back biking and you're sitting in the front. It was a little bit embarrassing because I'd rather just take a Grab car or have the tour driver drive us around. And we were also going so slow and I was just breathing in all the bad air. I don't know, I was not vibing with it. I didn't really enjoy it, but it is one of those experiences that you have to try out on the tour. I went to Uniqlo, which was really fun. I feel like they're all great in Asia, but I really did feel like a fatty buying a size extra large, and that was their biggest size. For dinner, we had pho, so for me, I tried out the dried version of the pho, and I was not really vibing with it, but it is one of those things that you just have to try while you're in Vietnam. Walking around that massive lake in Hanoi was pretty fun. It's pretty exciting because there's just so many people yapping and talking and walking and so many activities going on too. But the next day, we went on our day cruise around Halong Bay. It was a pretty gloomy gray day outside. It was also a little bit chilly, but we made do with the day ahead of us. I remember that the lunch was pretty acceptable for being a day cruise in Vietnam, so I wasn't mad about it. We visited a cavern and it wasn't the most exciting thing. I think I enjoyed looking at the rocks and the water more, but I will say the water, it wasn't at its bluest potential because of how the weather was this day. Also, the rocks you couldn't see too clearly because of how cloudy it was. But I did realize this day I really do like doing activities. I probably didn't enjoy visiting all of the pagodas and the temples that my parents set up, but I learned something new that day. But afterwards, we went to Ninh Binh, and this is where I had goat and very delicious chicken, but this is where I also started getting my chronic highs from. We stayed at a homestay, so it was quite literally a house in the mountains. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but it was only one night, and a breakfast buffet. It wasn't the worst I've seen, but it was pretty bad. Yeah, and kind of like what I was saying before, I really do like seeing pretty sights. For example, the rocks at Halong Bay, but also the mountains in Ninh Binh. I didn't really imagine myself liking this place because of how quiet it was, but I think that adds to the charm of the city, just the peacefulness, the solitude, and the mountains. This was also actually our very last day of doing tour activities in Vietnam because afterwards we drove back to Hanoi and we slept at Conifer, the worst hotel ever, before heading off to Thailand. After lunch, we went on a short hike, and this is when I realized how out of shape I got because I was panting climbing up these stairs, but the view was so worth it. We drove back to Hanoi for one last night at Conifer, and this is when I finally got my first good bowl of bom cha at Hanoi. I also got in one last good bowl of cha before I had to head off to Thailand. Afterwards, my family was pooped, but I still wanted to do a hot girl walk, so I was actually walking around, and it was pretty lively because it was a weekend, so there's a bunch of activities going on. After this night, we were booking it back to the airport, and we were on to our next leg of the tour in Thailand. So that's pretty much it. That was kind of an abrupt ending, so I'll give you guys a better outro. Thank you for watching this vlog. I know it's taken me months to finally get around to editing and recording the voiceover, but I feel like watching these clips on iMovie makes me reminisce, and I'm like, oh man, I wish I was there right now instead of back here crying over grad school, but the grass is always greener on the other side. I hope after I graduate this December that I can go back, so we'll see closer to the end of the year, but thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next vlog. I didn't end it well. Here. Oh, man. Oh, the camera's right here.